Hello and welcome again to Get to the Point Tech System, where we get straight in there. So for Talasoft, we're now at a point where we are organizing the Azure Active Directory Connect server so we can link up all the IDs from the domain controller into the Office 365 tenant so we can use those there. So there's a few things we want to do first of all, and that is we're going to create two service accounts. One service account which is on the local DC and a second service account on the Office 365 tenant. Now, 365 tenant can do this automatically, but I do like to have a bit more control over the names. So I'm going to create an account here. So we just create a new user. I'm going to call it SVC and AD Connect and give it a name like so, and a password too. Tell it it's not going to expire, and that will be happy to live there. Now I'm going to do the same thing in the cloud as well. So in our list of users here, I'm going to add a user, add a service account, and we'll actually call this one the same thing. It's not directly linked here, but by calling it the same, and we're also going to give it an on Microsoft.com suffix. Let me just make that slightly bigger, and I'm going to create the password like so, like this. And I am not going to assign a license to them. Next. And I am going to make that particular account a global admin account so it can do what it needs to do. Now, if you want to run through those a bit slower, feel free to pause the video as you go, but you can see that we now have a service account organized for AAD Connect. That is the point of this whole Get to the Point email system that I'm putting, the video system, sorry, that I'm putting together, because I want to run through very quickly. If you want to pause it and write these details down, you are welcome to, but we want to get to the point. So we have a service account there listed as well as. Now to tie all this together, I built a box called AAD01, and that particular box, its sole purpose is for the transmission of those accounts up into Office 365. Now we need to download that software, so the easiest way is just to jump on the net and to find it. Now if you do a search for Microsoft Azure AD Connect, you'll find that one of the first links here is download the Connect software. That will give you a nice new version, and you can see here that we are just going to download that, and you can see it runs from down here. So we'll run this one up, close that down. That will give us the Azure AD Connect software. And yes for that. There's a few things we need to know about having these identities pushed through to the cloud. So I'm going to go through those very quickly. So once again, feel free to pause the video if you want to read anything in more detail, but I am going to run through this relatively quickly. So yes, of course, we agree to the terms and conditions, and we are going to use the customize. We are not going to use the express settings for this. I want to go a little bit deeper into some of these settings. So first of all, we can specify a custom install location, existing SQL if you don't want to use them, an existing service account, and custom groups. I'm going to use the existing service account, which you'll notice from before was the Talasoft, and it was SVC_AAD Connect with its appropriate password. As you can see, it can make the account for you if you want it to. will then add the local SQL Express database. You can use an existing SQL server if you'd like to. If you've got a very large organization, you may want to do this, but for this particular case, we're just going to have the standard Microsoft SQL Express living on that server without any problem at all there. So on our next page, we get to decide how the user gets to sign in. Now, the obvious one is the password hash synchronization, where it takes the password hash that you have on your local DC and keep a copy of that hash inside the Office 365 identity module. That is the common one, the standard one to go through. You can set up federation with ADFS and ping federate. That's obviously a lot more complicated to set up. And also the pass-through authentication, which I'm going to talk about on different videos about how these particular authentication methods work. For this one, I'm going to use the password hash synchronization, and I am going to enable the single sign-on as well. So we'll hit next on there. Now this is where we connect to the Azure AD. Now this is going to be the same account that we set up on our first page. You'll recognize that when I put that in. And that will go through and then check that it is a global admin and that it can in fact connect to the Office 365 tenant with this account, which you can see that it's doing so. Now this is where it was important to get the talasoft.com domain in there already. As you can see, no directories are configured at the moment, so therefore we do need to take the talasoft.com forest and we're going to add that in. So we're going to hit add directory here, and this is where it's asking for, once again, what that forest account is. So we're going to put in the service account, AD Connect. Actually, we're going to do this in a slightly different format, like so, like that. And that should tell us that it will find that account and hook through to the talasoft.com Active Directory, which it does. So we hit next on there. That will retrieve the entire schema from Talasoft. Now we do not want to transmit the entire AD up to the cloud. We want to pick out certain functionalities of that. So we'll come back to that later on. And you can see already that yes, it is a verified domain. We've been through this. We've done this already. Now we do want to link up the user principal name as the Azure AD username. Now this is whereby the users log on to the cloud. Now if I just drop back to my DC and I have a look at my users, and let's pick up Annie Platt. This is referring to this here. So we have Annie Platt at talasoft.com. This is the UPN that it is going to talk about. So this is saying, do you want to use the UPN for the Azure AD username? You have a whole host that you can change it to if you want to. SAM account name or other items. But in this case, user principal name is generally the one we would want to be using. So we hit next on there. And this is where we get to tell it what the OUs we want to use on there. And I'm going to say no, not the entire thing. And you can see, turn that off, and I want to have Talasoft, and I will take the entire block here, although we don't have to. We can select individual OUs as we want to, but for this demonstration, Talasoft is going to be the one to use here, so we say next there. Now, we have a way of uniquely identifying all of our users. If you have multiple forests, multiple domains, this is where this becomes a bit more interesting. But in this demonstration, the users are represented only once across all of the directories with their object SID. So we're going to have this top option. And also we're going to let Azure manage the source anchor. Now this is the binding mechanism that keeps the accounts the same. Obviously the UPNs can change, so therefore we don't want to have a physical binding between the UPN and what's in the cloud. We want to be able to take those and have a more concisive way of linking them together. It used to be called the immutable ID. Now it's called, as you can see, the MSDS consistency GUID. So that's the directory services consistency GUID, and that's what we are going to be using for that. That is the default option. I recommend that you do keep that item there. We are not going to do any filtering. We don't need to filter out any particular DNs or groups to be synchronized, so we'll hit next on there. And the optional features, I am going to hit Exchange Hybrid. That is important if you are doing hybrid. And also, do we want to have Exchange mail public folders? Don't cringe when I say the word public folders, but yes, they can come up. They just take forever to migrate. Is possible. And you can see password hash synchronization is grayed and ticked. We can have password write back, group write back, and other items, keeping it very simple for this particular one. But the standard Exchange hybrid deployment is what we want to use for this. So we'll hit next there. And for single sign-on, as you can see here, we want to be able to enter the credentials of the account for the single sign-on. So if I say enter credentials here, we get to use those credentials. Now I'm going to actually use on this the service account that we created previously, AD Connect, and give it a Telesoft there. Okay, now you can see also that this does need to be a domain admin credential for Telesoft.com. Now I've done that on purpose, just putting that in because the AAD Connect box just needs to be able to read items from the DC. It doesn't need to write anything back. So therefore we're saying, well, do we really want to use this account for this particular process? So in this case we may say, no, we probably don't, because we don't want to have these two accounts the same. This is a common thing that happens. People try and use the same account. So I'm just going to drop back and we're going to go in here and create a secondary service account. So I'll call it service and we'll call it AAD SSO. So SVC AAD SSO. Give it a password, like so, and we are going to add that to a group, domain admins, and done. Dropping back into here, into the credentials, and we will give it SSO, like so. And you can see now we are good for single sign-on. And hitting next. And we will now also start the synchronization process. We can enable it into a staging mode where we can see what happens, but in this example, we know it's going to be good. Let's just hit the install and away it goes. That does all the verifications and all the testing and enables everything. We can watch it go through. I'm just going to pause until it is actually done and then come back after a few seconds. Okay, so once that is done, you can see configuration is complete and everything is ready to go. We can hit exit. Now, I'm going to find a little system here. You can see under Azure AD Connect, we have a sync service. I recommend we just take that, pin that to start. That will sit down here because this is our control panel. And let me talk about this error message. This is the synchronization service that we want to have a look at to be able to do this type of work. At the moment it says the service isn't started or your account is not a member of the required security group. Now this is a local account, so a local group, sorry, that you have to add things to. So let me show you where that is. Okay, so the place you want to be looking for that is under the computer management. So have a look under here. You'll find that there are some local groups that you might want to have people a member of. So have a look under your groups and you see these down here: AD Sync admin, browse operators, and password set. Underneath admins, you can see I need to have the Talasoft admin in here to make that work. Once that is in there, then I will be able to go into my synchronization service, and as you can see, that is now running. And you can see what it's been doing is has a success here. It's taken all of those objects which we were talking about before, and it has transmitted them to the cloud. Now I want to have a look at individual ones. I can have a look at what all the ads are, and I can click into them and I can see exactly what it's been doing. So that's quite handy from a troubleshooting perspective. If you do get errors, you can see what it's up to. But essentially, it looks after itself, and you can see there's some ads of an accounts and relevant names, and really what it's been doing, as you can see, it's been creating accounts as it comes through. So that is all looking good. What we should find then, if I close that and I drop into my page, should now see, if I refresh this, I should see some accounts in there, Annie and Peter, and there we are. And there's all of our accounts that we would be expecting to use. So essentially right now, someone like Annie could log in with this username into the portal to be able to log on and have a look around. We haven't licensed her, we haven't done anything with her yet, but she is there, she is ready to be logged on and using.